Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Safer Arizona Wire. I'm your host, David Stephen Wisniewski.
And I'm Tom Dean, attorney for Cannabis.
Tonight, we're talking about the reasons why Arizona voters should vote yes on Prop 207. But before I get into that, I would like to mention that we did do a show on the severe risk areas of Prop 207. And if you want to check that out, go ahead and look in our recent videos so you can see what that's all about. But this show is about why people should vote yes on Prop 207. And I kind of want to point out real quick before we get started, a lot of people are skeptical on whether or not Arizona can pass something and fix it later. Because something that we want to do is push another initiative for the 2024 election cycle to expand on the freedoms that we're going to get with Prop 207. And some people think it's never going to happen. Arizona's never going to vote on another initiative that's going to further the progress. But I want to let everyone know that it's been happening, and Arizona kind of does have a history of passing laws that further the progress of marijuana law reform in Arizona. We had 3 examples in the 90s. We had one initiative that legalized marijuana, but it was medical marijuana, and instead of saying doctors could recommend medical marijuana, it said prescribe. And for some reason, that was a technicality, and the state threw it out. Then we had another initiative that was thrown out because the state thought that Arizona didn't know what they were doing when they voted for this. But in response to that, we had the Voter Protection Act. The Voter Protection Act solidifies what Arizona voters vote for, and it was a direct response to the state saying you can't have marijuana in this state. So 3 times in the 90s, Arizona passed initiatives in furtherance of marijuana law reform. Then we had the Medical Marijuana Act, which was the 4th time Arizona did that. And we had the amendment, I don't know if it was an amendment, but we extended the medical marijuana cards from 1 year to 2 years, and we added testing. So that was the 5th time Arizona passed something to further the progress of marijuana law reform in Arizona. And if Prop 207 passes, it will be the 6th time Arizona passed something to further the progress of marijuana law reform in Arizona.
You could even say that the testing and the extension of the duration of the patient and caregiver card, that could be actually construed as 2 separate changes. Even though it was in the same bill, there are 2 completely unrelated separate changes. So you might even say that this is a 7th.
Yeah, it could be considered the 7th, but at the very bare minimum, the 6th. And I don't think Arizona is going to stop with Prop 207. I think there will be a 7th or an 8th, and we will continue progress, and that's what we're pushing for. But here for 2020, we're asking people to vote yes on Prop 207, and here's a list of the reasons why. First off, it's much better than our current prohibition, which states everything is a felony on the books. That's 13-3405, ARS 13-3405, ARS 13-3408.
3405 is with regard to marijuana plant, flower.
ARS 13-3408.
3408. Now, 3405, though, that's possession and cultivation. Both of those are being amended here, are being changed here in this. And then 3408, as it pertains to concentrates like wax or, vape pens.
Which is a much harsher penalty than the regular marijuana.
Yeah, considered a narcotic drug under the criminal code, class 4 felony. That's being legalized.
And then we have 13-3415.
Right, that's the paraphernalia. So anything, a pipe or papers, anything used to ingest marijuana or concentrates, or anything used to grow marijuana, ballasts, lights, nutrients, anything like that. That's anything used for any of those is all considered paraphernalia. So that's all also legalized.
Right. Well, today, without a medical marijuana card, all that is considered a felony on the books. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? And that's even correct. I hear this quite often that people say even a seed is a felony.
Yeah.
Is that true?
That's absolutely true.
So you're going from even a seed being a felony to 1 ounce being legal, up to 2.5 ounces being a petty offense, up to 6 plants being legal, and your paraphernalia, and a limited amount of concentrates. So all these things that are currently a felony right now, adults 21 and over will be able to legally go and buy and cultivate these things themselves.
Right.
So let's move to the next one. I believe this will ultimately reduce arrests for marijuana-related crimes. What do you think?
Well, it obviously will. I mean, We've had thousands of people just here in Maricopa County every year are arrested and charged with possession of marijuana or possession of drug paraphernalia or concentrates. And in Arizona last year alone, there were 254 people who were actually serving hard time in prison for possession of marijuana. So this will obviously reduce. Every time a person is found today, who's not a patient, obviously, in possession of even a seed or a half a gram or a pipe, that's a felony charge. So if this, after November, if 207 passes, that's nothing. It's legal.
And in my opinion, that's the most important aspect of legalization. We're here to legalize cannabis to stop cops from arresting people for marijuana crimes. That's the main purpose. Everything else, in my opinion, is secondary. When people are talking about the market that they don't like, that's secondary. First and foremost, we need to stop people from getting arrested for cannabis.
Yeah, that's right.
So moving forward, you got something else?
No, I'm just saying that those numbers are really high. I mean, we were talking about over 20,000 people. I think last year, the most recent statistics from the Department of Public Safety were 2018, but I think we were at 18,000 people arrested for simple possession of marijuana. So yeah, these are numbers that are really high. All of those will be gone overnight. So it'll absolutely reduce the number. Now, will there be some people who are in possession of more than, for example, they're 1 ounce, walking around and somehow get caught with 2 ounces instead of 1 ounce? Yeah, that'll happen. So there will be some people who still get in trouble for possession of marijuana when they have more than they're allowed to have.
And I don't agree with that, but that's why we're pushing for another effort for 2024.
That's right.
So we don't just compare this initiative to prohibition, even though it's a pretty good thing to compare it to, but we also compare it to Prop 205 from 2016, and this initiative is better than Prop 205 in 2016, and here's a couple of reasons why. For one, it secures home cultivation rights. Now, in 2016, we had a problem. In the locality section of Prop 205, it stated that your locality could prohibit your home cultivation if they considered it to be a nuisance. From locality to locality, that language is not in this initiative, so it appears that these home cultivation rights are secure, and adults 21 and over are going to be allowed to grow their 6 plants if it's locked in an area that's not accessible to minors. Also, it's got a higher concentration decriminalization, a higher concentrate decriminalization threshold than Prop 205. In Prop 205, if you guys remember, it was 5 grams was legal, but 5.1 grams would default to the existing prohibition, and you would get arrested for a narcotics felony for 5.1 grams of concentrates.
Right.
Here, the threshold goes up to 12.5 grams of concentrates before you go back to the existing criminal code, which isn't the best improvement, in my opinion. I mean, I wish it would be a lot higher than that, but it is a step forward.
It's pretty good. I mean, it's meant to, for personal use, I don't know, most people would agree that you don't need to have more than 12 and a half ounces on you for
12 and a half grams.
I'm sorry,
I would love to have 12 and a half ounces
12
of
and a half
concentrates.
grams for personal use, like in your vape pen cartridge, or I don't know, things malfunction on me. In your vape pen cartridge, or in your, if you
still got it
wax
tilted towards you though.
To dab with.
This is the front.
Okay, to dab with, or hash, whatever. I mean, probably it's not necessary to have more than that before you trigger felony prosecution.
And that's only 5 grams at a time. Up to 12.5 grams is the petty offense. But if you consume your 5 grams in one day, you can go to the next day and still get your next 5 grams. So it's not like you're limited to 5 grams total. That's just 5 grams at any given time outside your house. Now, next, why it's better than Prop 205, why 207 is better than Prop 205 is Prop 207 has limited expungement that will obliterate cannabis charges for possession of up to 2.5 ounces of flower, up to 12.5 grams of concentrates, cultivating up to 6 plants, and possession of paraphernalia. And so what that looks like to me is that people who got arrested in between Prop 205 and Prop 207 who would have been legalized under Prop 205 can still end up getting those charges obliterated off their record.
That's right. So in a way, this kind of undoes any harm that 2016's initiative failing to pass might have caused in the form of persons who were charged or convicted of possession of marijuana, possession of drug paraphernalia, possession of narcotic drug, cultivation of marijuana. I mean, obviously, it doesn't completely undo it because those persons had to go through the stress and the expense of being charged with that, but at least their record of conviction will be, as you said, obliterated. So
obliterated.
Right. So it goes a long way to completely restore that person as if it were or had been legalized in 2016. And that was actually, we really. And we should say, in fairness, Dave, that Safer Arizona, we fought hard to get provisions like expungement included in 207. In fact, we went so far as to say that these were non-negotiable items and that they had to have.
We just let them know it wasn't going to pass if they didn't actually protect the consumer.
Yeah. And, I wrote the expungement provisions. I sent them in to the drafters of Prop 207. They included my language with some changes, some adjustments in the way that they wanted to do it for technical reasons. But for the most part, they agreed to include that. And so, I mean, it's a big deal, being able to, anyone who was convicted for possession of marijuana, possession of concentrates, possession of drug paraphernalia within those limitations that was committed prior to 207 or 207 going into effect will be eligible to have those convictions expunged. And that means for all purposes, they can never be used against that person for any reason. Professional licenses, further future criminal prosecutions, anything. They are gone.
Well, next we have something that really pisses off the prohibitionists, but it has a solid DUI provision that helps prevent sober drivers from getting a cannabis DUI. Now, Tom, can you go a little bit more into that and how it's different from what we have right now?
Well, sure. So, the history, we did a show about the history of DUI in the state of Arizona. Time was not that long ago where even having inactive metabolites in your system was an automatic DUI. That went on for decades. People who, in other words, inactive metabolites can be in your system for more than 30 days. So when I was an attorney back in the 90s, for example, I'd have people on a regular basis coming in and saying, hey, a month ago I went to a party on a Friday night and I smoked a little weed and it's, showed up in my system as an inactive metabolite and yeah, it was an automatic DUI. Fortunately, that changed a few years ago. The Supreme Court of Arizona said these have to be active metabolites. They can't be inactive metabolites. And that's great. That definitely improves things. But active metabolites stay in your system for a few days, 5, 6, 7 days. So it still didn't really help anybody who was a daily cannabis consumer or even a weekly cannabis consumer. So certainly not patients. So when we went back to the Supreme Court for medical marijuana patients and we won in State v. Dobson, a decision from the Arizona Supreme Court that said patients, if they can convince the jury that the level of THC in their system was insufficient to cause impairment, that was a defense. Only available to patients. Non-patients, no defense. You got active metabolites, guilty. End of story. This initiative dramatically improves DUI by saying any adult over 21 or over, the state, it's no longer automatically DUI just to have even active metabolites in your system. The state must prove that the level of that THC or those active THC metabolites must be high enough to prove to the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that they were sufficient to cause that individual, not the public in general, but that particular individual based on their consumption patterns, etc., to be impaired. That's a really high burden of proof, and I think it's going to be very difficult from this point forward for the state, for prosecutors, to convict anyone 21 or over of a marijuana-related DUI.
I think that's very important. Right now, we still have people getting DUIs for not even smoking that day. people sometimes smoke several days prior, and they're still getting hit with the DUI because they don't have a card and they have no defense like what Prop 207 is offering.
Right.
So moving forward,
yeah, massive improvement in the rights of cannabis consumers in connection with DUI prosecutions. I mean, it's a game changer, an absolute game changer.
Hi, I'm Tom Dean, attorney for cannabis. You may know me from my work here in Arizona in important cannabis-related matters like the ASU campus ban case or the cannabis concentrates case, State v. Jones. I've been representing cannabis consumers for 26 years now, and for the last several years, I've been doing nothing but that, representing people in important criminal and DUI cases related to the use of marijuana. If you've got a case involving criminal charges, or if you're just looking for advice or wanting to enter the Arizona's cannabis industry, please give me a call. You can reach me at 602-635-4990, 602-635-4990, or visit me on the web at attorneyforcannabis.com.
well, moving forward right now, we are surrounded by legal states, but people who buy marijuana from those legal states and then come over to Arizona are getting busted by our police here in Arizona. Now, once Prop 207 legalizes that ounce, I would imagine that if you go to California and buy your ounce and then end up in Arizona, that state police will no longer arrest those people for possessing their ounce or less.
That's right. I mean, if they have an ounce or less, there's no it's perfectly legal. It doesn't matter where you got it. If you're in possession of an ounce or less, you're perfectly legal. And if you're in possession of no more than 2.5 ounces, it's a petty offense. It's not an arrestable offense. It's just a little fine. So even up to 2.5 ounces is a petty offense. But yeah, 1 ounce or less, 100% legal, no matter where you got it.
Next, if we are unsuccessful in our 2024 efforts, and if you're just joining us, we are pushing for a 2024 effort to improve on the freedoms that we're getting from Prop 207. But let's say worst case scenario that doesn't go through and we're stuck with Prop 207 for many years to come. It's still a much better situation than living with full-blown prohibition for several years or even decades to come.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is an important, and I always use the metaphor of a football game. This is a really important first down. We're not going to, look, if you want to wait around for 50 more years before we get the perfect, marijuana legalization initiative that just legalizes just everything without any limitations, if that's what you want and you're willing to wait 50 years for that, then you should probably vote no for Prop 207. But if you want to make an important step forward, a first down towards achieving that goal, and saving thousands, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people over the course of the next few years from persecution for choosing to consume marijuana, then you really have to vote yes. I mean, it's not even a debate. This isn't even a question. But don't worry, because as Dave said, we're going to be back in 2024. That's a promise. And we're going to expand this stuff even more. We're going to get into much deeper in terms of more expansive criminal justice reform, larger amounts permitted, even petty sales, etc., all defelonized or decriminalized, and in a dramatic expansion even in the area of licenses, which I know some of the people in the industry are going to hate to hear that, but I got news for you. Yeah, there's going to be a lot more licenses coming in 2024. Cultivation licenses, retail licenses, wholesale licenses, kitchen licenses, all that is coming. And we maybe even broke into different tiers: small scale grow, medium scale grow, large scale grow. We want as many licenses as possible.
Absolutely. Now, once Prop 207 passes or fails, that's when Tom and I are going to start drafting on the 2024 initiative, and it could take several months. We've written initiatives before, and I think it took us like 6 to 8 months to draft the initiative.
Unlike a lot of people, we've had the experience of writing initiatives now for what?
Since 2014.
Since 2014.
At
so,
least.
I mean, it's
I don't know
like
if you've got longer.
we can practically do it with our eyes closed at this point. I mean, really. So it won't take any time for us to snap together a new, improved, expanded legalization initiative for 2024. And only thing we're waiting for is to get this one passed. So you want to see that 2024 one? It'll happen real soon. Let's vote yes on 207, get it passed. and then in short order, you're going to see what we have in plan for 2024.
Another reason why I'm voting yes on Prop 207 is that it allows access to much more cannabis than patients have right now. And here's how it works. Right now, patients can only possess 2.5 ounces every 2 weeks. Now, with this initiative, if they go to that 2.5 ounces, they can just buy their recreational ounce. And if you can consume an ounce per day, well, then you can legally go buy an ounce every single day, and in 2 weeks, you've just legally bought and consumed 14 ounces. That's a lot more cannabis than patients have access to right now. So I think the more cannabis people can get legally, the better. Okay, next. If Smart and Safe fails, if Prop 207 fails, it's likely that the same group or a similar group will be back in 2024. And I would rather see us progress to the next step than have something similar written in 2024. I can't imagine that if this thing fails, then they're going to come out with some beautiful, great initiative that we want in 2024. It's going to be similar to the same thing in 2024, and we're not going to be able to progress further. Also, I would like to push an initiative for 2024, and having two competing initiatives during the same period of time is a disaster. We saw that in 2016, and it eventually destroyed both initiatives.
You also have to realize that the people who decide these initiatives are not the prohibitionists. They're also not the advocates, the activists for marijuana policy reform. The people that decide these initiatives are people who are in the middle. They're on a fence. And those people typically are not comfortable with radical change. What they want to see is more incremental change. Those are the people we have to convince. Just like in 2010, do you think that the voters in the middle who were responsible for passing that initiative would have voted for this initiative then? Probably not.
I don't know.
Probably
Prop 203 passed by 4,000 votes.
Right.
It was actually so close. I remember watching the news. They actually said medical marijuana failed in Arizona, and it wasn't until a day or two later that the mail-in ballots came in.
That's
They're like,
right.
oh, actually it passed.
That's definitely right. That's absolutely right. And so just like the voters, those critical voters in the middle would never have been willing to pass this initiative back in 2010, the reason they're ready to pass it now is because we've had 10 years of experience under medical marijuana, and they realize that the sky has not fallen. You know, the society hasn't completely collapsed, or any of these crazy reefer madness theories that we were being fed by the prohibitionists. Well, likewise, we get 207 passed. 4 years from now, these same voters are gonna go, okay, we were right. We're okay. And more voters will be convinced and will be able to take the next step forward. But that's how it works, because you've got to understand that the average Arizona voter is not a cannabis activist. And so as much as we'd like to believe in the echo chambers that many of us live in, that the whole world wants to legalize marijuana without any restrictions tomorrow, the fact of the matter is that's just not the case. It takes incremental change. This is, once we get this under our belt, 4 years from now, the Arizona voters are going to go, okay, yeah, everything seems cool. So let's make some more fixes. Let's make some more changes.
Now
let's expand the licenses. Let's make deeper defelonization, deeper decriminalization.
This kind of just adds to that, and this is the last point that I have, is that it's an important first down that will set us up for more progress in the future. And like I said before, I can imagine if this thing fails, once 2024 rolls around, a similar group's going to put up the exact same thing almost, and we want to be further along in 2024.
Yeah. Please do not allow us to remain in this kind of quagmire or limbo of having no change. We've got to move forward. And I don't know, even the most, hardcore activists out there who want perfection, want absolute, legalization, marijuana, just like tomatoes or something like that, they're actually coming around now too, I've noticed. And some people who I think are absolutely radical and unrealistic are even at this point coming around to say that actually they do agree on a vote yes to 207. Like one that comes to mind is this guy named Mickey Jones, who's kind of out there. I don't know any of you have ever seen him, but he's even officially now come out in support of 207, a yes vote. And so that ought to tell you, because I don't think they get much more radical or than Mickey Jones, and he's even saying vote yes now.
It just makes sense to pass this in 2020. Now, that's all I got. Tom, do you have anything else before we conclude this broadcast day?
No, just look, make sure vote yes. I mean, if you want to have a fun, actually, I will give you a little bit more. If you want to get yourself a good laugh, pick up the. I did have it sitting around here. The voter guide. Pick up the voter guide.
What's on the ballot voter guide?
Yeah, what's on the ballot voter guide, and read some of the vote no comments that come from prohibitionists. I guarantee that you and your friends will have a pretty good laugh reading some of these antiquated and bigoted statements that these vote no people are putting out there.
Well, all right. That's all we got for you today. Until next time, this was Safer Arizona Wire with David Stephen Wisniewski.
Tom Dean, attorney for Cannabis.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Dean, attorney for Cannabis. You may know me from my work here in Arizona in important cannabis-related matters like the ASU campus ban case or the cannabis concentrates case, State v. Jones. I've been representing cannabis consumers for 26 years now, and for the last several years, I've been doing nothing but that, representing people in important criminal and DUI cases related to the use of marijuana. If you've got a case involving criminal charges, or if you're just looking for advice or wanting to enter the Arizona's cannabis industry, please give me a call. You can reach me at 602-635-4990, 602-635-4990, or visit me on the web at attorneyforcannabis.com.